You're now watching AEC Today, the news service for the Allegheny East Conference Camp Meeting. And now your hosts, George Johnson and Lauren Davis.
Usually, we would bring you the regular AEC Today news show.
But today, the little mama and I, we're going way back to bring you our favorite game show.
Guess that, Cheeto.
A groovy, interactive game show where you answer the questions.
And you get to learn more about our solid president, Charles L. Cheatham. You dig?
I can dig it.
I can dig it. You can dig it. So are you ready to guess that, Cheatham? On an undisclosed date, Charles L. Cheatham entered this world. His father and mother, the late William and Laura Cheatham, were very happy about their baby boy. Little Charles grew up as a product of Christian education. He attended Baltimore Junior Academy and Pine Forge Academy. In his higher education years, he attended Oakwood College, Andrews University, Temple University, and Indiana University.
Wow, the press went through some far-out Adventist educational institutions. Can you imagine the tuition cost?
Say what, Mama?
Sure enough, my brother.
You know, that was a lot of bread coming out of the Cheatham household, especially since the chief wasn't the only child. And now it's time to guess that Cheatham.
How many children were born to Elder Cheatham's parents? So what's the answer, my brother?
You want to know the answer?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to know the answer? The answer is 8. So right now, we're going to talk to some of those Cheatham siblings to get the skinny on this cat.
And do you remember when Charles was born?
I can't.
Do you remember when Mom went? Well, I guess he was born at home.
Yes, all of us were born at home except Wendell.
Okay.
And so Charles was born at home in September of 1936.
1936. Now, when he was small, I remember he was somewhat sickly at times.
Well,
And I can't remember what the ailment might have been. But I do remember on an occasion I was holding him in my lap, and I felt very sorry for him. But what the ailment was, I'm not sure. The only thing I can remember after that was on an occasion, you remember when Dad pastored the Delaware district, his income wasn't but so much.
right.
And on an occasion, Dad said to Mom, Laura, we're going to have to go to the poorhouse.
I remember.
You remember?
I remember that. Yeah.
Charles heard him say that, and just after that, we missed Charles. We didn't know where he was. Somebody went upstairs and found Charles packing a bag. They asked him, Charles, what are you doing? Dad said we're going to the poorhouse, and so I'm getting my clothes together. You remember?
I remember that. Charles was, of course, the pastor's baby, their new pastor's baby. And so the people made a lot over him, especially the people at the Millsboro church. And they did call him, for some reason, Dumpy or Baby Dumpling. And Charles never had a fat day in his life. My mother would make sure that we always knew our memory verses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one
Took me a long time to remember.
one time, the memory verse was from Matthew, I think 8, verse 20, where the scribe wanted to go home with Jesus, and Jesus said to him, foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I realized that Charles was becoming a compassionate person. Also, that Charles had been taught about Jesus, and he loved Jesus. He just thought Jesus was a wonderful person. And so when Charles repeated that memory verse, he said, I'm going to get Jesus a pillow so that he would have something to lay his head on.
Yeah.
See, it was foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head. And that's what Charles wanted. Jesus, to him, was a wonderful person. He had been taught that. And when it said the Son of Man, he had been taught in Sabbath school that meant Jesus. So that was something that he said, and we just marveled at that he would think that much about Jesus. And also, see, we all had our pillows, of course, in our beds, and so he was going to see that Jesus had a pillow because he said he had nowhere to lay his head.
I remember that after Charles became the president of the conference, Merle,
Yeah.
ministers would come to me knowing that Charles was much younger than I. Ministers would come to me and ask me, how do you feel that your younger brother is your conference president? And I would always respond, well, he's exercising his particular gift.
Right.
He had that gift, and my gift was simply to be a minister, a pastor. So we were always happy for Charles. And we thank God that he has been so successful in his ministry.
I remember the times when he evidently, when a little boy, had in his mind that he wanted to preach, because I remember he would get up on something like something a little higher than the floor, and say, "Everywhere, everywhere, cornflakes, cornflakes, cornflakes," and he would just be so,
I remember.
kind of loud, and he just seemed like he had it in his mind. So as Oliver and my sister Ann have said, we're very proud of him. We see he has gone from his beginning to become a fine minister, and then, of course, to follow sort of in his father's footsteps, so to speak, as the president. And we, just wish him the best always, and we love him dearly. We are.
Elder Cheatham entered the gospel ministry in 1959 in the South Atlantic Conference. He pastored a 3-church district, and during that 5-year tenure, he led one congregation in a land purchase, another with the rebuilding of poorly maintained worship structures, and he also helped erect a new church building. Elder Cheatham first came to the Allegheny East Conference in 1963. He has pastored churches in Jersey City, Inglewood, Mount Clair, Patterson, and Camden. He absolutely loves the state of New Jersey and its members, and they love him too. Some of them recently had the opportunity to crown him king for a day.
Which New Jersey congregation crowned Elder Cheatham king for a day?
And the answer is Patterson. Let's hear from that old cat, David King, and hear what he has to say.
The King for a Day idea came mainly from the fact that our theme for our 50th anniversary was Journey to Jubilee. And we retraced our history back to our beginnings of how God had blessed us through different ministries. And it dawned on us that we had a good footer to mount everything upon, because Elder Cheatham was a guest of honor already that day, and he was also our first pastor of the church. So it worked out that he had a 50-year reference with our church anyway. So we decided to do something special for him in the afternoon. As the administrator, he's become his journey, okay, from his beginning, humble beginnings here in Patterson, because Patterson was not a 400-member church when he pastored it, more like 4. And now it's grown, and he's been able to see that grow, okay? And it should spark that his journey has been very successful. King for a Day was a play on words, because my name was King. And also the true meaning of someone who's a true leader and a servant leader.
Elder Cheatham is an extensive traveler. His role throughout the years has been a preacher, teacher, trainer, administrative consultant, and executive mentor. From the years of 1989 to 2000, President Cheatham served on an evangelism team that traveled to Ghana, Zimbabwe, Siberia, and Romania.
Man, I wish I had his frequent flyer miles.
I know what you mean. I ain't even never flown before. What was the team called that President Cheatham traveled with? You done?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You want to see who he traveled with?
Yeah, I don't know. You know who it is?
I don't know. Let's check the video to see.
Elder Cheatham was a vital part, in fact, an essential part of, what shall I call it, the C.B. Rock, Calvin B. Rock evangelistic team. Actually, all of this occurred while I was a vice president of the General Conference and had a rather liberal budget and was called upon by the leadership in several divisions to conduct evangelistic campaigns, and not being savvy at all in media and that kind of thing, I knew that I had to have somebody who was well acquainted with that sort of operation, who'd done it before, and who had an evangelistic flair himself. So I called Charles and asked him if he would be willing to accompany me, and he said yes. And to my delight, to my utter delight, and he and I worked together in a number of places during that stretch of years. And those places included several countries in Africa, also in Romania, and and Russia, very, very vitally in Russia, where we spent 7 weeks together. He had two functions primarily. Two primary functions. One was that of the advanced scout. In other words, he would go beforehand several months and set up the meetings, talk to the local conference people about what we planned to do and how we were planning to do it, and see that we had the right venue for the operation, and that the pastors were organized, the local pastors, so that when I came in with the rest of the team, the musicians, we were ready to go. And then during the meeting, of course, he was in charge of all the media, all the things on the screen and the microphones and so forth, with the help of local individuals, but he was the one in charge. And there was the third thing he did. He did preaching, especially toward the end of the meetings. He did a lot of teaching and preaching and even baptizing in some instances. So those were the three functions that he performed, and we did that, as I said, in Romania, in Russia, and in several places in Africa, including Kenya and in Zimbabwe.
The office here that you see is the office of the president. I've worked with Elder Cheatham since the year 2000 when he became president. But prior to that, I had the privilege of working with him years ago. But for the last 12 years as president, he has been a fantastic boss to work with. Sometimes we have glitches. No screaming, no hollering, no shouting. It's working together, checking out his calendar, making sure that the correspondence is done, working with him. And as I see him interacting with other people, I see that he is not a micromanager, because he has chosen people that he knows can do the work, and that he relies on you to do what's necessary. As far as a boss goes, he's one of the best that I've had. I've really enjoyed working with him.
Thanks to the Soul Sister #1, Miss Norwood, for giving us a glimpse on the Prez as an administrator.
All administrators need some leisure time. Wouldn't you say so?
I can dig it.
So time to guess that Cheatham.
What does the boss man do to chill?
And the answer is
it's almost time for us to go back to Canada again.
Yeah, I've been waiting all year for that.
I remember the first time I went up, 1978, with Charles.
Well, I was probably a baby back then.
And he had built the boat. He built the boat himself. And we went up, and I'm not going to tell you all the events of that particular year, but I've been going with Charles since 1978 up to Canada.
Is that so?
You joined us later, but Claude, you and Charles and myself, we have a great time going up to Canada. And Charles is the ultimate fisherman and boatman, if you know what I'm talking about.
How do you find that place anyhow?
His father used to take him up there because his father used to go up there to relax once he took off from being president here. His relaxation would be to go fishing. So Charles would take his father fishing, and now here we are going up with Charles every September, Labor Day.
His father was a very wise man.
Yep. And he may have been a better fisherman than Charles, but we don't know, because I never fished with his father. But he knows that island was the Thousand Island area of Canada. He knows it like the back of his hand. And we'd go up, and Charles said, we need to go over here, over there. You know, there's a deep spot over there. There's very shallow over this side. Over there is where you can catch, what are those things we catch?
We catch bass, and we catch pike, and we catch sometimes we don't catch anything but a good coal.
Right. And a lot of seaweed. We've probably dragged the whole St. Lawrence with seaweed. But anyhow, we have great fun. That's the main thing. And Charles is really right in the midst of it. He's the cause of it.
behind every good man is a great woman, and Elder Cheatham is proud to have by his side the lovely Retha Cheatham. She has traveled extensively with him and served for many years in the Allegheny East Conference's Treasury Office. They have 3 adult children, Charles II, Tracy, and Ramsey, and 5 grandchildren, Amber, Atia, and Charles III, Emma, Louise, and Taylor J.
How many years has Elder Cheatham been married to the foxy Mrs. Cheatham? Lauren, do you know how long the chief has been married to that foxy lady, Retha?
No, I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know, but we're going to have to check this video to find out.
Many of our friends know, close friends know, that Elder Cheatham and I have always had a problem remembering our anniversary. And a friend of mine who passed away would always call us 2 or 3 days before and remind us of our wedding anniversary, and I appreciated that very much. I remember the first time that I saw Elder Cheatham was on a Sabbath morning for 11 o'clock service. I understand that he was working at Pine Forge at the time, and was asked if he would bring a package to the church that morning. And so he did not have an assignment or speaking engagement, so he did. Well, at the time he came to the church, the elders had just received a message that the speaker for that day was not going to be able to make it, and the pastor was away at another appointment, and they did not figure, what are we going to do? And then in walks Elder Cheatham. And he came in, and I didn't know all this. I'm just sitting in the congregation. And the service started, and where I was sitting, I could not see who the speaker was because of the podium in the front. And the service started, and the choir sang and all, and then finally they introduced him. And when he stood up, he had on this leisure suit, no tie. You know, in those days, you had this afro, it was about that long. And I was like, who in the world is that coming to speak on Sabbath and not dressed? But I found out later what happened. But I never met him then. I didn't meet him until years later when he came back to, you know, as assistant, as the pastor of the church. And so I think the first time that I remember actually meeting him personally was that I was working at the city, and I was sitting at the front desk, and the elevator door opened, and there was Elder Cheatham standing there. And so we were able to talk to each other after he got off the elevator. And so years later, we got married, and we have 3 children that we're very proud of. And one of the things that I've been so blessed with Charles is being able to travel, to see so many different places, and Russia and India and to the Caribbean and Africa, and here in the United States, some of the beautiful places that I've been able to see. To give you an idea of what kind of person he is, my mother passed away from cancer, and she had never been any further than New Jersey. But 2 years before she passed, he decided that he would take her to see the Grand Canyon in Yellowstone Park. And so we got her first airline trip, and she went on that trip with us for about 10 days. And when she came back from the airport that day, she just cried and cried because she was just so happy to have had that experience in her life. And I just thought that was so nice of him to do that for my mom before she passed away. I just appreciate our marriage, and I consider myself to be a very lucky and very blessed person to be married to Charles Cheatham. And we're very proud of him as being the president of Allegheny East Conference and for the years that he has served in the ministry.
How you liking your new hair, Mama?
I'm loving it, brother.
I
How
see
you
it.
like yours, brother?
It's all right. It's a little hot, though.
You gonna pat it for you?
Pat it down, pat it down, pat it down. So the answer to the number of years that the Cheathams been in marital bliss is 30. On a serious note, Elder Cheatham, we would like for you to know that you're appreciated.
And the constituents of this conference think that you are
absolutely awesome,
peaceful,
compassionate,
dedication,
visionary,
timeless,
funny person,
fatherly,
compassionate,
kind,
understanding,
humble, willing,
intentional,
a hard worker,
smooth.